The idea of multiple worlds and parallel universes once seemed like pure myth. It goes back thousands of years, long before science had the tools to explore it. But now researchers are studying it seriously, using mathematical models and real data. Somehow, ancient thinkers without modern technology or advanced knowledge managed to tap into something that's now capturing the minds of today's scientists. Hinduism, the world's oldest philosophical and religious tradition, has explored this idea more deeply than any other. It's built on the belief in cycles, countless worlds, and multiple layers of reality. While it doesn't use modern terms like multiverse or parallel realities, many of its ideas echo today's theories about multiple worlds. Hindu scriptures describe reality as a vast, multi-layered existence, where every being lives in a world that reflects its consciousness and karmic path. Ancient texts describe existence as a vast, multi-layered reality, where different levels of being aren't physical places like planets or galaxies, but states of consciousness shaped by inner growth. The highest planes are home to enlightened beings who exist in harmony, surrounded by light, peace, and wisdom. These realms are seen as places free from suffering, where the mind is no longer bound by illusion or limitation, allowing direct connection with higher forces. In these dimensions, reality feels fluid. Matter responds to thought and intention, and the line between existence and awareness begins to fade. The middle world is the reality most familiar to us, shaped by laws that limit our perception. It's a place of learning where we face challenges, experience joy and suffering, and gradually push past the limits of our minds and emotions. Here, matter is stable and change happens slowly, unlike in higher realms where consciousness can shape reality instantly. This world gives us the freedom to grow, make choices, and shape our own destiny. Yet it's still a world of illusions, since our perception of true reality remains limited. And it's not the only one of its kind. Many traditions speak of countless similar worlds, each following its own path of evolution. Below are worlds consumed by chaos, fear, and destruction, states of consciousness clouded by ignorance, aggression, and suffering. Here, matter is heavier, time flows differently, and space feels closed off and confined. According to ancient beliefs, beings in these realms exist in a constant state of fear and dissatisfaction, trapped in lower forms of perception. They are unaware of their connection to higher levels of existence, caught in illusions and limitations. But even in these realms, nothing is permanent. Freedom is always possible for those who awaken and shift their consciousness. These levels of existence aren't divided by space. They coexist, interwoven and constantly influencing each other. What sets them apart isn't location, but perception. The higher one's consciousness, the lighter and more radiant reality becomes. Modern scientific theories suggest that our universe might be just one of many, existing alongside countless others. Some physicists propose a multi-dimensional space where different universes follow their own unique laws, with matter and energy behaving in entirely different ways. This concept echoes ancient beliefs about multiple worlds, where each being perceives only the reality that matches its level of awareness. It suggests that existence is far more fluid than we tend to think, that reality itself is layered, revealing deeper levels of perception as consciousness expands. In Hindu tradition, a single divine being can take on different forms across different eras and worlds. Vishnu, one of Hinduism's principal deities, is said to have 10 incarnations, or avatars, each appearing in a different time and setting. These avatars can exist simultaneously across multiple realities, much like modern theories of the multiverse, where different versions of the same being exist in parallel dimensions. In ancient Indian philosophy, reality isn't something fixed or unchanging. It's fluid, shaped by perception and constantly shifting. Unlike the Western materialist view, which sees the world as existing independently of consciousness, Eastern thought suggests the opposite. Reality is formed by the mind and changes with one's level of awareness. Ancient texts echo this idea, describing the world as a reflection of the mind, an illusion shaped by perception. By breaking free from familiar mental patterns, a person can move beyond limited experience and see reality in its full multidimensional depth. The way we experience the world is shaped by our thoughts, emotions, and beliefs. When the mind is calm and clear, reality feels whole and harmonious. But when it's filled with fear and worry, the world takes on a darker, more chaotic tone. That's why so many spiritual practices focus on bringing the mind to a state of peace and clarity, because in that state, a deeper understanding of reality unfolds. Instead of seeing the world through the filter of personal emotions, a person begins to perceive it as it truly is. In this sense, reality isn't a fixed, objective thing, but a flow of endless possibilities, shifting in response to one's inner state. Ancient texts describe heightened states of consciousness that let a person move beyond ordinary reality. They speak of perceiving worlds normally hidden from everyday awareness and even shifting between them. These transitions aren't physical but happen on a deeper level of consciousness, opening the door to new dimensions of existence. It's said that through deep concentration or certain practices, a person can experience life in a parallel reality. Some sources describe dreams where people enter alternate worlds, interacting with them just as they would in everyday life. Sometimes these journeys happen consciously, allowing them to explore, reshape their surroundings, and move between different spaces, like peeling back the hidden layers of reality. There are countless stories of people who, after years of spiritual practice, develop the ability to influence reality, defying physical limits, moving through space, changing their form, becoming invisible, or instantly gaining knowledge. While modern science hasn't confirmed these phenomena, the idea that consciousness can shape the material world is gaining more and more attention from researchers. In quantum physics, there's a fascinating phenomenon. A particle's behavior changes depending on whether it's being observed. In classical physics, objects have fixed properties like position, speed, and mass. If a ball is flying through the air, you can pinpoint exactly where it is and where it's going. There's no uncertainty. It can't be in two places at once or move in multiple directions at the same time. But at the level of elementary particles, the rules are different. In quantum mechanics, a particle's state isn't set until it's observed. Until that moment, it exists in multiple possible states at once, a phenomenon known as superposition. When physicists began studying electrons, photons, and other tiny particles, they found that these particles don't behave like solid objects. Instead, they exist in a state of uncertainty, as if they're in multiple places or conditions at once. Until they're measured, there's no way to know exactly where they are or what their properties are. Only the probability of finding them in a certain state can be predicted. One of the most famous examples of this is the double-slit experiment. When electrons or photons pass through a barrier with two openings, they don't act like solid particles but like waves, going through both slits at the same time and creating an interference pattern. But the moment they're observed, when scientists try to track which slit they pass through, they suddenly choose a single path and stop behaving like waves. This suggests that until they're measured, they exist in multiple possible states at once. If observing tiny particles can change their state, it suggests that perception might play a much bigger role in shaping reality than we realize. Maybe the world around us isn't something fixed and predetermined, but a vast field of possibilities, with consciousness selecting just one. It's a lot like life itself. We're constantly faced with different possible paths, but in the end, we experience only the one we choose. Hinduism also explores the idea of alternative timelines. In the Mahabharata, there's a concept of different versions of the same event, where a single story plays out in multiple variations across parallel realities. This mirrors the quantum, many worlds theory, which suggests that every decision creates a new branch, leading to countless possible outcomes. Modern scientific theories about parallel universes are starting to sound a lot like ancient Hindu ideas. The inflationary universe theory suggests that countless independent universes exist, much like the Hindu concept of endless cycles of creation and destruction. In Hindu philosophy, time isn't seen as a straight line with a beginning and an end, but as an endless cycle where the universe is continuously created, destroyed, and reborn. It's divided into great cosmic ages, each with its own balance of harmony and order, reflecting the evolving state of the world and the consciousness of living beings. In the first age, the world exists in a state of harmony and perfection. But over time, decline sets in. People lose their spiritual direction, moral values fade, and chaos and suffering grow. The final age is a time of collapse, when the world reaches its breaking point, marked by upheaval and destruction. Eventually, everything dissolves, only for the cycle to begin again. A full cycle of these ages is said to last over 4 million years. Thousands of such cycles form an even larger span of time, often compared to a single day on a cosmic scale. At the end of this period, the universe enters a phase of rest. Space, matter, and time seem to dissolve, only to emerge once again. The cosmos moves through these endless cycles where creation is always followed by destruction. This grand cosmic order unfolds over trillions of years before the cycle starts anew. Modern science explores similar ideas, suggesting that the universe might not just keep expanding, but could one day contract, starting the cycle all over again. This concept echoes ancient beliefs about the cyclical nature of time, hinting that the birth and destruction of worlds aren't singular events but part of an endless cosmic rhythm. In the late 20th century, physicists studying the early universe ran into a series of puzzling questions that standard cosmology couldn't explain. Why does the universe look so uniform across vast distances? How did galaxies form so quickly? And why does space-time seem flat when gravity should have curved it? To solve these mysteries, scientists developed the theory of cosmic inflation, a breakthrough that completely changed our understanding of how the universe began and took shape. According to this theory, in the first moments after the Big Bang, the universe went through a brief but incredibly fast phase of exponential expansion. Unlike the steady expansion we see today, inflation happened at such an extreme speed that space stretched far beyond the observable universe in an instant. This helps explain why the cosmos looks so uniform, because in those earliest moments everything was close enough to interact before being rapidly pulled apart. But this model led to an even more mind-bending idea. If inflation isn't unique to our universe, but a fundamental property of the cosmos, then it could be happening in different regions of space independently. This means our universe isn't the only one, it's just one of countless others, each forming from its own bubble of space. Our reality emerged within one of these bubbles, while others exist elsewhere, each with its own laws of physics, unique particles, and possibly even different forms of life. These worlds are completely cut off from one another because the distances between them are so vast that even light traveling at its maximum speed could never cross the gap within the lifetime of the universe. If this theory is true, our reality is just one among an infinite number of others. Some universes might look a lot like ours, with familiar stars, planets, and even intelligent life. Others could be completely alien, with different laws of nature shaping them in ways we can't begin to imagine. In some, gravity might be far stronger. In others, atoms might be unstable. And somewhere out there, life could exist in forms beyond anything we've ever conceived. The idea of multiple universes might sound like science fiction, but it's backed by solid mathematical calculations. The theory of inflation accurately predicted the distribution of cosmic background radiation, the faint heat left over from the universe's early expansion. Observations confirm these predictions, making inflation one of the most reliable theories in modern cosmology. And if inflation itself has been proven, there's no reason to think it happened only once. It's far more likely to be a fundamental process, repeating endlessly across the vast expanse of the cosmos. The biggest challenge with this theory is that if other universes exist, they're completely beyond our reach. No signal from them can ever reach us, so we can't directly see or measure them. But scientists are looking for indirect ways to test the idea, like searching for signs of universe-to-universe collisions in the cosmic background radiation. For now, the inflationary universe theory remains one of the most promising models, not just for explaining how our reality began, but for opening the door to the possibility of countless other worlds beyond our reach. In the mid-20th century, physicist Hugh Everett introduced a radical idea that changed the way we think about reality. He proposed that every possible outcome of an event doesn't just remain a possibility, it actually happens, creating a new branch of reality. Unlike classical physics, which assumes there's only one version of the world, Everett's theory suggests that an infinite number of universes exist, each playing out a different possible outcome. Everett's idea comes from the strange behavior of particles at the quantum level. In classical physics, objects always have a definite position and properties. But in the quantum world, a particle can exist in multiple states at once until it's measured, a phenomenon known as superposition. The traditional view was that once a particle is measured, it chooses a single state while the other possibilities simply vanish. But Everett had a different take. The particle doesn't choose at all. Instead, the universe splits into multiple branches, with each possible outcome unfolding in its own separate reality. In one universe, the particle is in one place. In another, it's somewhere else. These parallel worlds exist independently, and the people within them have no awareness of the alternative versions of reality. This means that every time a quantum event occurs, reality splits, creating a new branch. If a person faces a choice between two options, Everett's theory suggests that they make both decisions, but in separate universes. In one reality, they take one path. In another, they choose the other. These timelines never cross. But that doesn't mean we're aware of our alternate lives. Each version of us exists only in its own universe, with no way to perceive or connect with the others. The idea of multiple worlds helps explain many of quantum mechanics' biggest mysteries, but for a long time it wasn't taken seriously. The main reason? The concept of parallel reality sounds more like science fiction than actual science. Still, despite the skepticism, Everett's interpretation solved problems that other quantum theories struggled with. The traditional view says that quantum states collapse the moment they're observed. But Everett's take is much simpler. Nothing collapses. Instead, every possible outcome plays out in its own separate reality. While the many worlds theory is still a hypothesis, it has gained traction in modern physics. Some researchers argue that if the universe truly follows quantum mechanics at every level, there's no reason to think superposition only applies on a small scale. If electrons and atoms can exist in multiple states at once, why couldn't the same be true for larger systems, even entire worlds? Supporters of the theory believe our reality is just one of countless others, each with its own version of history, its own chain of events, its own path for civilization, and even alternate versions of every person. The philosophy of David Lewis, one of the most influential American thinkers, shares striking parallels with Hindu concepts. His theory suggests that all possible worlds exist just as fully and as real as our own. Unlike the traditional view, which sees possible worlds as mere abstract ideas, Lewis argued that each one is a complete, independent reality. According to his idea, our world is just one among an infinite number, where every possible outcome plays out somewhere. If in one world a person turns right, in another they turn left. In this way, every possible version of events unfolds in its own separate universe. This idea leads to some fascinating implications. If a cup falls and breaks, there are other worlds where it stays intact, or never falls at all. According to Lewis, all these worlds exist simultaneously, but they're completely separate from one another. There's no way to travel between them or observe them, but that doesn't make them any less real. Lewis called his view pluralistic realism because he believed that anything logically possible must exist. According to this idea, any internally consistent reality, whether it's a world where dinosaurs never went extinct or one where Napoleon won at Waterloo, is just as real as our own. This was a radical shift from the traditional view that possible worlds are merely hypothetical constructs. For Lewis, they weren't just abstract ideas, they were fully existing, independent realities. This idea raised big questions about reality, necessity, and chance. Lewis used it to explain counterfactuals, statements about what could have happened under different circumstances. For example, the phrase, "If you had studied more, you would have aced the exam," makes sense because, in some possible world, that outcome actually happened. In this view, counterfactual reasoning isn't just speculation, it's grounded in the existence of real alternative worlds. Lewis's theory of possible worlds faced plenty of criticism. The biggest challenge was that these worlds could never be observed or tested, making them impossible to prove. To many philosophers, the idea of an infinite number of fully real worlds felt overly complicated. But Lewis pushed back with a simple comparison. If we accept an infinite set of numbers in mathematics, why not an infinite set of worlds? Despite its controversy, the idea of possible worlds has had a huge influence on philosophy, science, and pop culture. The concept of multiple realities has shaped stories in books, movies, and comics, inspiring narratives where alternate versions of the same character exist in parallel worlds. From Interstellar to the Marvel Multiverse, many sci-fi stories in one way or another reflect Lewis's philosophical vision. Hugh Everett's and David Lewis's theories of multiple worlds might sound alike, but they're fundamentally different. Both suggest the existence of many realities, but they differ in how these worlds emerge, what they're made of, and the reasoning behind them. Everett saw multiple worlds through the lens of quantum mechanics. According to his interpretation, every time a quantum event occurs, the universe branches, creating separate, independent realities where every possible outcome plays out. These worlds are constantly forming with every physical interaction, but they never intersect. If someone flips a coin, they exist in one world where it lands on heads and another where it lands on tails, but they can never cross between them or even know the others exist. To Everett, reality is an endlessly branching structure, a vast web of possibilities unfolding naturally through the fundamental laws of physics. Lewis, on the other hand, believed that all possible worlds have always existed, completely independent of one another. They don't emerge from quantum events. They simply exist in parallel, each with its own history and set of laws. Unlike Everett's interpretation, Lewis's theory doesn't involve branching. Every possible world is already there, whether we're aware of it or not. If an alternate version of you exists in another world, having made a different choice, it's not because that world split off from yours. It was always there, a separate reality of its own. In Lewis's view, every logically possible version of the universe has its place, whether or not it's ever discovered. And that wraps up our exploration of multiple worlds, parallel realities, and the fascinating theories behind them. What do you think? Are we living in just one version of reality, or could countless others exist alongside ours? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this video and want to dive deeper into topics like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.